The movie begins by showing a jarring scene where Enzo Ciccotti, a young man, emerges from a water channel, covered head to toe in mud and dirt. Despite his obvious exhaustion and illness, he makes his way to the city bus stop and rides home. Enzo continues coughing up blood on the bus ride, his skin pallid and clammy. When he finally arrives at his apartment, the fever wrapping his body has grown even stronger, leaving him trembling and weak. Enzo is alone, with no family or friends nearby to care for him, and he fears that this might be the end for him, as he's unable to seek medical attention. To his surprise, he wakes up the next morning feeling rejuvenated and stronger than ever. He starts his day by eating a nourishing breakfast, ready to take on his job as a professional robber. Enzo first visits his colleague Sergio to invite him to join him on a job, but finds Sergio unresponsive, so he decides to go to the hideout alone. His destination is the headquarters of his boss, Lo Zingaro. After a year of committing robberies, Lo Zingaro, Enzo's boss, decides to change the direction of their criminal enterprise. He wants to start a drug trafficking operation, seeing it as a quick way to make more money. One of Zingaro's men expresses concern, warning that drug trafficking is extremely dangerous, as the city's syndicates that control the drug trade are known for their violent tendencies. But Zingaro is unfazed. He responds with anger and physically attacks, as a warning and example not to question his decisions. Sergio, a longtime employee of Lo Zingaro, is also forced to go along with the plan. His task is to extract 2 packages of drugs from the bodies of 2 teenage boys. After Sergio and Enzo meet, he shares the plan's details and asks Enzo to join him in the mission. Enzo agrees, and he takes him to his apartment, where they'll prepare the equipment they need for the operation. While at Sergio's apartment, Enzo meets Sergio's daughter Alessia, who has grown into a beautiful young woman with a passion for watching an animation series named Stiljig. Enzo is struck by Alessia's strange attitude and peculiar way of speaking, and Sergio explains that she has a mental disorder that developed after her mother passed away. After preparing the equipment, Sergio and Enzo met their clients at a construction site on the outskirts of town. Along the way, they listened to a radio broadcast warning of the recent rash of random bombings terrorizing the city. Upon arriving at the destination, Sergio and Enzo quickly move the 2 boys to an old building, but things quickly turn for the worse. One of the boys dies from an overdose, and the other, Antonio, cannot accept his brother's loss. In his grief and frustration, he turns on Sergio, attacking him with a glass and firing several bullets into his body, killing him. Enzo, who is standing nearby, is also shot and falls from the top of the building. But to his amazement, he survives the fall without any serious injuries. He runs back to his apartment in shock, trying to understand what has just happened and how he can survive such an accident. That night, Lo Zingaro and his men attend a nightclub to meet Nunzia, leader of the largest drug trafficking syndicate in Rome. As Zingaro takes the stage to sing, one of his subordinates, Sperma, approaches him with some disturbing news that Sergio and the drugs they were supposed to get have vanished. This sends Zingaro into a panic, as he knows that he must deliver the drugs to Nunzia or risk dire consequences. Meanwhile, Alessia worries when her father doesn't come home with Enzo. She repeatedly asks Enzo about Sergio, and Enzo, feeling guilty for not being able to tell her the truth about Sergio's death, says that he'll be home soon. However, as the hour passes, Alessia becomes increasingly agitated and keeps knocking on Enzo's door, asking for her father. Enzo, growing tired of the noise, becomes frustrated and vents his anger by pointing at his apartment door. To his surprise, his hand easily smashes through the iron door. He is confused and wondering how he can have such strength. After discovering his newfound strength, Enzo becomes convinced that he has obtained superpowers like those of a superhero. Rather than using his powers for good, he chooses to use them for personal gain, breaking into an ATM machine in the city center to steal money. With the money he earns, he indulges in his favorite foods, adult movie DVDs, and medicine to treat the scars on his body. To his surprise, all the gunshot wounds and bruises he sustained in his earlier accident heal quickly, leaving no scars on his body. As Enzo removes bandages from his body, he hears a scream from the direction of the apartment hallway. He quickly discovers that it is from Alessia, who Zingaro and his men are interrogating, searching for the drugs Sergio was supposed to bring to them. Frustrated with Alessia's lack of information, Zingaro orders his men to search Sergio's house for the missing drugs. As the situation becomes more intense, Alessia becomes increasingly frightened and fights back, which angers Zingaro to the point that he hits her repeatedly. Suddenly, a mysterious man wearing a black mask appears from the window, attacking all of Zingaro's men. Faced with the defeat of his men, Zingaro takes Alessia as a hostage and threatens to kill her unless the mysterious man allows him to escape. The mysterious man, who is Enzo, makes sure that Alessia is safe before letting Zingaro go. After the incident, Enzo returns to his apartment, and Alessia, realizing Enzo's extraordinary powers, chooses to follow him and calls him Jig after her favorite animation superhero character. After the incident, Enzo reluctantly agrees to let Alessia stay with him until it's safe for her to return home. However, her constant chatter about the superhero jig made it hard for him to sleep. Realizing that Sergio no longer has any family to take care of her, Enzo decides to take Alessia to a daycare for people with mental disorders. He lies to her, telling her that he'll be back soon with Sergio, and brings her a princess-style outfit to make it easier for her to adjust. Meanwhile, Zingaro and his men are left baffled by Sergio's sudden disappearance, with the drugs they were supposed to get from Nunzia. Zingaro begins to yearn for superpowers, like the robber who recently went viral in the media. In order to make up for his debt to Nunzia, he plans to rob a bank's remittance car, carrying 200,000 euros. However, one of his men, Biondo, objects to the plan, suggesting they could borrow money from another associate, Marcelino, or have a direct conversation with Nunzia instead. But Zingaro rejects the proposal, as he is determined to prove himself to Nunzia that he could be relied upon as one of the city's top drug candidates. He wants to become a leader in the high-profile drug network and have power over the city, making all other mafia members submit to him. Unfortunately, despite his ambition, he finds himself powerless when one of Nunzia's men, Vincenzo, comes to collect on his debt. Zingaro can only beg Vincenzo to ask Nunzia to give him more time to repay the debt. Enzo is studying a map he had found in Sergio's safe deposit box, tracing a route he believes the bank's remittance car will take. Unknown to him, it's the same route that Zingaro and his men plan to rob. Enzo has the same idea of robbing the delivery car for the money when Zingaro and his men discover that Enzo has taken their coveted money. They try to shoot Enzo to seize the money, but they realize their bullets don't work against his body, and they decide to release him and escape the place. That night, Zingaro and his men have to hide in an old building to avoid Nunzia's men hunting them. As Enzo relishes his stolen money, he hears knocking on his apartment door. When he opens the door, he finds several police officers with Alessia. They explain that they found her wandering alone on the main road. The officers, believing Enzo to be her family, caution him not to let her wander alone in the city as it's dangerous. After the police leave, Enzo scolds Alessia, asking why she left the daycare. Alessia explains that she believed Enzo had lied and intended to abandon her there, so she decided to run away. Although Enzo is frustrated with Alessia's constant chatter about the superhero jig, he takes her back in, and even agrees to watch the animation series with her. As he watches her innocent behavior, he starts to sympathize with her, but is still unable to tell her about Sergio's death. The next day, Biondo secretly borrows money from Marcelino to repay his debt to Nunzia in hopes of avoiding Zingaro and his gang members getting killed by Nunzia's men. But when Zingaro finds out about it, he cannot accept the betrayal and orders his men to feed Biondo to the ferocious dogs he keeps. In the following days, Enzo grows increasingly close to Alessia and spends more time with her, doing various activities. Over time, Alessia helps Enzo open up and connect with people around him, moving him away from his previous solitary lifestyle. She also encourages him to use his powers for good and help others, reminding him that great power comes with great responsibility. Unfortunately, while Enzo and Alessia are shopping at the mall, an argument ensues, and Enzo unintentionally tells her that her father has died. Heartbroken and angry by the revelation, Alessia leaves Enzo using a city bus. Realizing his mistake, he chases after her and uses his powers to stop the bus and draw attention, expressing his worry for her state and apologizing for lying to her, asking her to come back home with him. Desperate to pay off his debts, Zingaro agrees to sell himself to Marcelino. Unfortunately, after he obtains the money, Nunzia's men suddenly appear and ambush him. Initially, Nunzia intends to burn Zingaro alive, but he begs for mercy and promises to repay the debt as soon as possible. However, the situation quickly escalates as Marcelino fights back, shooting Nunzia's men one by one in a tense shootout. After narrowly surviving the ambush, Zingaro returns to his hideout to find that Nunzia's gang has brutally murdered his dog and his men. The only survivor of the massacre is one of Zingaro's men named Tazana, and he becomes determined to seek revenge against the Nunzia gang. As he sees the news on television featuring Enzo's superpowers, he becomes intent on finding out where Enzo acquired his abilities from. At the same time, Enzo accompanies Alessia to the hospital when they learn that Sergio's body has been found so she can say her last goodbyes. After they bid farewell to Sergio, the two of them leave for a motel outside the city, as their videos have been spreading on social media and they need to find a safe hiding place. In the relative safety and quiet of the motel, Enzo and Alessia open up to each other about their lives and try to come to terms with their fate. Unfortunately, their peaceful time is short-lived when Zingaro and Tazana track them down, holding both Enzo and Alessia hostage. Upon regaining consciousness, Enzo finds that he is bound with tape and Alessia is tied to a chair. Zingaro demands that Enzo reveal the source of his superpowers and threatens to harm Alessia if he doesn't comply. Enzo is unsure of the origin of his powers, but he complies with Zingaro's demand and takes him to the river where he fell. He tells Zingaro that he gained his powers after falling into the mud in the river, but Zingaro remains skeptical. A fight ensues between Enzo and Zingaro, and it escalates when Alessia accidentally kills Tazuna while trying to escape from the van. As the fight is going on between Enzo and Zingaro, Nunzia and her gang arrive at the scene to deal with Zingaro. Meanwhile, Alessia manages to escape again but gets captured by Zingaro once more. During the ensuing shootout between Zingaro and Nunzia's gang, he uses her as a human shield, resulting in her getting severely injured by the gunfire. Enzo runs to her aid but she succumbs to her injuries before they can get her to the hospital. With her final breath, she urges Enzo to use his powers to help others, and he is left alone with the heavy weight of her last request and the responsibility of his powers. Although Zingaro tries to flee from Nunzia's men, they eventually capture him and intend to put him to death by burning him alive. However, the unexpected occurs again when Zingaro survives the flames by diving into a mud puddle in the river. With burns covering his body, Zingaro becomes obsessed with taking revenge on Nunzia for her actions. He covers his wounds, gathers weapons, and fearlessly attacks Nunzia's headquarters, mercilessly killing all her gang members. After Alessia's death, Enzo struggles with finding meaning in his life and direction. While wandering on a highway, he encounters a car accident where a young girl is trapped inside a flipped car. Enzo rushes to save the girl and gets her out before the car catches fire. Seeing the girl's safety, he remembers his last words to Alessia and decides to fulfill her wish to use his powers for good. He chooses to walk the path of virtue and help others as much as possible. When he hears news of Zingaro's plan to commit a crime in a stadium, he quickly borrows a motorcycle and goes to the stadium to stop him. After Enzo arrives at the location, he quickly locates Zingaro, armed with a cell phone that serves as a detonator for a bomb he planted in the stadium. Enzo is forced to engage in a fierce fight with Zingaro to stop his plan. He manages to grab the detonator from his hands, but Zingaro activates the bomb manually, giving it a 4-minute countdown before detonation. Knowing that the bomb could cause harm to many people, Enzo makes the difficult decision to leave the stadium with the bomb and attempt to safely detonate it in a river. He sacrifices himself to protect others and accepts his role as a hero, doing what he can do to save lives. In the wake of the tragic event, the people of Rome were left reeling with grief over the loss of Enzo, who had bravely given his life to save thousands of others. To pay homage to his sacrifice, the city's residents came together to honor his memory. They wrote Enzo's name in bold letters and created a colorful display of thousands of flowers in the town square. Despite the overwhelming sadness that hung heavy in the air, a glimmer of hope was on the horizon. Unknown to all, Enzo had miraculously survived the explosion, albeit with injuries that left him permanently scarred. Determined to continue his work as a hero, he donned a mask that had been crafted for him by Alessia. The moral lesson of this film is that with great power comes great responsibility. It highlights the importance of using one's abilities and power wisely and the consequences that can arise from not doing so. It also shows the value of selflessness and sacrifice, as Enzo gave his life to protect the lives of others.